everyone, Lorraine here, the Crafted Coyote coming from Fire and Ice Pottery Studio. I'm here today to talk to you about different types of tracing techniques. We got a lot of people in the studio that are looking to put an image on a piece of ceramic or even on a canvas, and so we do offer a lot of different ways to trace things. So one of the ones that I've done recently is this little napkin holder. It was a paisley print. We just found some paisley prints online that I really wanted to try to put on here. Paisley is a really generic sort of shape, so it was a really good one to test out. Another one we've also done is this little box with some familiar characters on it. This is one that grandkids especially will, or somebody in the studio will have a character they really like. Due to copyright issues, it's not something we ever would resell, but a lot of people want to use it for their own personal use, which is generally within what's allowable. So the three things we have here for tracing generally are good old-fashioned tissue paper. We have what is known as graphite paper, graphite tissue. You'll hear it for a lot of different terminologies when you're in the store. And this one's a new one. It's generally called a carbon paper. It's very similar to the little two-part carbon paper that you use for like tax forms and things. So that's the other alternative. I'll start with that one because that's a little pickier. It doesn't work on many things, but it is becoming more popular as the technology grows. So the carbon paper is essentially very similar to the graphite tissue. It's got a top layer and a bottom layer. When you put the piece of paper in the printer, it'll say top, bottom. You print on one side, then you actually take it and put it on your piece and you draw over the top and the image transfers through. The problem I found with this stuff is it has only worked on ceramic for me. I've tried it on wood, I've tried it on canvas, and I have not been able to get this to get a very clear impression. It's also very, very light. It has an effect similar to the graphite tissue, but it is so light, unless you're really wanting to get those fine lines like I did on this box, this is not going to help a whole lot. The advantage of this is you don't have to trace it, which is something that you'll run into with the tissue paper. But you can also avoid that with the graphite tissue. Now, this one is probably one of the biggest go-tos as far as canvases go, or transferring on mixed media. A graphite tissue has a top layer and a bottom layer. Again, the bottom layer is going to be almost like when you used to coat the back of your paper with graphite from your pencil if you were a kid, if you ever did that. That is what this is going to do. So you lay it over the top of whatever piece you're working on. You'll put your image on top, and then you'll just trace. And after you trace, you get the impression that it goes through onto your piece. The big advantage of this is you can print whatever you need to print, throw it over the top of the graphite tissue, and that graphite will go through. The disadvantage to this is you're getting graphite in your middle of the piece. Graphite is going to be able to smudge really easily. If you put it over the top of something like paint, sometimes it's really, really hard to get a clear impression. So it's not going to be ideal for all situations. The third thing that we actually do in our studio is actually with this little here tissue paper. So this one's a little more time consuming because you have to lay your tissue paper over your piece that you want to trace. You're going to trace it with a pencil, and then you're going to lay it on top of your piece and go over it with a Sharpie. The Sharpie is going to leak through onto the piece, and this is advantageous because the ink from the Sharpie will settle on top of the paint. It makes it easier if you want to do two-layer things like this one. I had a background first, and then I wanted to transfer the image over the top. The disadvantage to this is you have to have a really steady hand for tracing because you're actually going to be tracing it twice. So like on this one, we messed up a few areas when we were tracing. It was a little hard to see some of the details. Here we end up with a really, really just basic outline. So you're not always going to get as clean of an impression as you will with the paper. But it will definitely help if you're really just trying to do layers on your piece. So those are the three different techniques that we